Selaco is a game I've wanted to talk about for a long time. I've had access to their demo for many months, but I've not been able to show anything. Until now. Hey, Jarek the Gaming Dragon here, and Selaco makes me very excited, because I've based this entire channel around games just like Selaco. Early to mid 2000s first person shooters. Half-Life, F.E.A.R, Bioshock, Prey 2006, Doom 3. If you like these styles of games, Selaco is right up your alley. People that grew up with the 90s retro shooters got a chance to grow into an adult and then make their own 90s retro shooters, leading to this boomer shooter explosion. I firmly believe that we're starting to see the same exact thing with Half-Life and F.E.A.R style games. A while ago we saw Industria release, which is blatantly inspired by the original Half-Life, and that made me very happy. We have Compound Fracture in the works, a game that is inspired by, say, Resident Evil and Dino Crisis with PlayStation 1 style graphics. And we have two prominent first-person shooters that are heavily inspired by F.E.A.R, Selaco and Trepang. Coincidentally, both of these games are releasing demos on Steam that you can play on June 13th. I've had a lot of people recommend Trepang to me. Trust me, I've known about Trepang for years. I've just been waiting for more content to cover before I make a video of it. As for this video, what you're seeing here is not the demo. Kind of. What you're seeing here is a preview build that has an extra level, some extra guns, and some extra mechanics. What you will get is a very fleshed out level to fully enjoy, and let me tell you, this is a game that you should have on your Steam wishlist. It's fantastic. Now, the Selaco devs describe this game as Doom meets F.E.A.R, but in all reality, it's basically a spiritual sequel to the original F.E.A.R. The Doom part comes in the engine. Believe it or not, this runs on GZ Doom, which is insane. I have no idea how they managed to have this much detail in the GZ Doom engine. One of the biggest pillars to F.E.A.R's combat is that any sort of encounter is going to result in dust and smoke and explosions and particle effects everywhere. If you want to make a game like F.E.A.R, this is mandatory. But building your game on GZ Doom makes that a lot more difficult. Somehow they managed, because that's exactly what happens in every encounter. There's also a proper lighting system, and enemy AI is significantly smarter than your typical boomer shooter, because this is not a boomer shooter, so that has to be a thing. But again, it's on the GZ Doom engine, so that's a lot of work, and I don't even know how they did it. I imagine a lot of their dev time is just struggling to get the GZ Doom engine to do the things they need it to do. It probably helps that GZ Doom is open source, but still. Now, since I'm playing an early preview build, there's not really a story to go over because the game isn't done. But as you can tell, the environments are incredibly detailed and very immersive, so they're definitely going to be trying. On this first level, I actually got a pretty heavy Doom 3 inspiration, straight down to the UAC voice.
The Allied Coalition for Expansion engines work tirelessly to create Selaco, a viable space for human Mitsumits to flourish here on Mars. Welcome to Mars City, Union Aerospace's premier research facility.
You're on some hospital with frequent mentions of Mars and in space somewhere. The gameplay is not Doom 3, so if you didn't like Doom 3, you can rest easy, but I don't think anyone ever faulted Doom 3 for being atmospheric. I mean, that was sort of the whole point of Doom 3. And again, there is just so much detail in these environments. And it's not just for you to be able to shoot everything apart either. Again, environmental storytelling is something that is very underrated in first-person shooters, and I have a feeling this game is really going to go down that path. You want to explore anyway, because there are a lot of secrets in this game, or even things that are more blatantly in your face, like finding PDAs with codes that you can enter into a cabinet. Again, more Doom 3 inspiration. Then there are more clever secrets. Like, for example, I opened a door and accidentally picked up a chair and then threw it aside. I was just pressing E and it was in the way. Then I saw an MRI machine and thought, what would I do with that chair? So I chucked the chair into the MRI machine predictably blew up, and that opened a secret. Those are my favorite kind of secrets. They make you feel smart, and an explosion is always fun to watch. Then there are Easter eggs like this.
Hi, Teddy 11. Do you want to play? Give me a hug. You're very fantastic. You're hurting our friend. Speaking a different language here? Cut it out. How's this for a fair hug, asshole?
So trust me when I say you want to explore. It will give you goodies like new guns, grenades, and stuff like that. And just to drive home the point as to how detailed all of this is and how much work they must have put into this game, This is an environment that is obviously not done. It only exists on the second level in the preview build. You won't be able to access it. The only reason this exists is to let you backtrack to earlier in the level, but the reason I'm showing you this is to let you see just how much detail gets added from the base map. And also it's really easy to see the demo and go, okay, that looks mostly complete. When's the full game coming out? Not realizing that there's still a lot more work to do. It's hard to stay patient when a game looks this good, but trust me, you want them to have more time so you can get the best game possible. Okay, but let's move on to the thing that you all probably care about the most, the gameplay. This is where you are going to see the inspiration from F.E.A.R more than anything else. Hell, some of these rooms are blatantly taken straight from F.E.A.R, and that's not a complaint. The only thing this game doesn't have that the original F.E.A.R did is the slow motion mechanic, which, to be honest, I don't see this as a negative thing. One of my biggest complaints about the original F.E.A.R is that it's much too easy, even on the highest difficulty. And that's mainly because you can just go slow-mo and shoot everyone in the room before they can do anything. In Selaco, you don't get that luxury. You have to fight them head-on. And this is where you'll see one of the pillars of F.E.A.R, the enemy AI. As you're fighting these enemies, they will be talking to each other the entire time, giving specific callouts. And if you're not paying attention, they will flank you. F.E.A.R is a bit legendary for its AI, so this is very important. But again, I want to point out, I don't know how they did this in GZ Doom's engine. I imagine it was a total headache to get working. Just as important is the map design. See, in the original F.E.A.R, every combat encounter felt like a multiplayer map. This gave you and the enemies plenty of different directions to go and flank if they wanted to. And that's also true here, which is fantastic to see. This means that no encounter will play out the same way. You can replay the game over and over again and it will feel different every time. But what about the player? What can you do? Well, movement at first is the same as any other shooter. You can move and strafe and jump and crouch, no big deal. Melee is a little different as you sort of get that melee lunge that you would in, say, Halo, which is great. It lets you close the gap easier. But ultimately, nothing too out of the ordinary for a first-person shooter. Until you get your dash. Now, a dash mechanic, again, isn't too wild. We've seen that in a lot of retro 90s shooters in the past. And if you want to dash backwards and to the sides, it is just a dash. However, if you dash forward, you are going to slide. This alone is fantastic, as the cooldown for it is very short, and it allows you to slide into enemies and knock them down. However, if you jump out of the slide, you yeet yourself across the map. Now, I'll be honest, this didn't feel intentional, so I asked the devs if it was intentional or not. Here's their reply. Used to be an accident, but people loved it so much that we leaned into it. We actually want to make it so that slide jumping keeps your feet on the screen so you can kick people in the head. This is awesome to see, because one of the things I was going to say is, if this isn't intentional, please keep it. It's so much fun. It's also unintentionally brilliant, because this effectively gives you both F.E.A.R's slide and jump kicking without meaning to. It's also just an awesome burst movement option to get out of harm's way. And arguably most important, it shows that the Selaco devs are in tune with their players. They want what is the most fun for the people playing their games. They're not so stuck up in their own head with what their whole ideals are that they're going to do things that make no sense that nobody asked for like some other devs. Last but not least, what about the guns? Well, if you advertise your game as being F.E.A.R inspired, your guns need to be satisfying, and they definitely are. The first gun you get is an assault rifle, and it's kind of the jack of all trades. Pretty decent at getting headshots, you can zoom with it a little bit, nothing really too wild about it, but it's still fun. The next gun is your trusty pistol. This basically serves the same role as a Magnum would in other first-person shooters. Kind of. Now, I used this wrong at first. I assumed, okay, this is a high-power pistol, so effectively this is a pocket sniper like in every other first-person shooter, but that's not really how this gun works. You see, with the assault rifle, right-clicking will have you aim. You can make it ADS if you want to, but I decided to keep it F.E.A.R style, which is an option in the menu. Anyway, the Magnum doesn't have this. Right-clicking will give you a 3-round burst. The main takeaway is that this is not the Half-Life 2 Magnum. This is not a pocket sniper. This is great up close, and once I figured that out, I made better use of it. Filling the same slot as the assault rifle, you get the SMG. And I love this thing. If you know me, you know I love my high fire rate weapons, and SMGs tend to fill that role a lot, say like a Scorpion Evo or something of the like. And yeah, that's exactly what this is. It's in the same slot as the assault rifle and uses the same ammo, so keep that in mind. Close to medium range, this thing absolutely shreds, and the melee will straight up taser your opponent. Awesome. Next up is the Penetrator. This is a nail gun just like the Penetrator in the original F.E.A.R. It also has the same ability to nail opponents to walls. I don't have much more to say about this gun other than it's pretty effective at range and it's a lot of fun to penetrate your enemies. And last but certainly not least is a double barrel pump action shotgun. You knew this was coming. If you make a game based off the original F.E.A.R, that shotgun has to be good, and this does not disappoint. This shotgun has good range and absolutely obliterates the enemies. What they did to keep this gun in check, however, is to limit the amount of shotgun shells you get, otherwise you could just use this and nothing else for the whole game. So I really did try to use it sparingly unless I got up close and personal. This also allows the SMG to continue to be useful, which is really good for me because I really like using it, but if I had unlimited shotgun shells, I probably wouldn't use the SMG at all. And then there are the grenades, which in this preview version, there's only 2 that can be seen, but more will be in the final game. One of them is sort of a standard mine, not too much to say here, it does what you would expect. The other though is a basic grenade. And something I find people don't talk about too much with the original F.E.A.R is just how awesome these grenades were. The original F.E.A.R, by far, hands down, had the best grenades in first-person shooter history. They were strong, they were contact grenades, they rolled where you wanted them to go, and they had this awesome, ridiculous shockwave. Well, thankfully, in Selaco, these grenades don't disappoint. These things are incredibly strong. Because of that, you don't get too many of them. They would definitely overpower it if you did. So yeah, there's your weaponry. And in this preview version, you can upgrade your weaponry. The way you upgrade your weapons is to find a safe room, which plays this sort of almost Boneworks sounding music. I say Boneworks music here because it's a lot more chill than the rest of the game. It's relaxing yet mysterious at the same time, almost fills that feeling of awe. Anyway, you interact with this panel over here and you can upgrade your guns. There are around 4 upgrades for every single gun. I think the first upgrade people will gravitate towards is that you get to fire 2 shots before needing to pump your shotgun. One of the other ones I thought was interesting is that your Magnum pistol will get to fire explosive rounds. Now, I truthfully wasn't using this pistol that much, so I went with one of these upgrades to try to use it more, and it definitely helped. But yeah, there's a lot of upgrades here, and I'm excited to see how this will turn out in the final game. As for the enemies, you're not fighting only the same enemy the whole game, otherwise that would still get boring even here. Most of the time, you will be fighting enemies that just have a basic assault rifle or one that is holding a shotgun. You can tell the difference between these two right away, which is good. The shotgunners will be red and they will start glowing before they shoot at you. This is fantastic because that kind of reduces the amount of I suddenly died from a shotgun syndrome. There are other more interesting enemies like small crawling robots that will explode when they get close to you. Typically, I don't like these style of enemies, but if you do the dash jump thing, you can get away before they blow up, so it's not that big of a deal. I also found the assault rifle is actually the best thing to deal with them because you kind of need to be precise when trying to shoot at them, and they will mostly just be walking straight at you, so it's not that hard of a shot if you know they're there. Where they really get you is when they catch you off guard. You could die so quick if you don't know they're around. That only happened once though in a defense segment, so I can't complain too much. Then there are these jetpack enemies that will fly into a wall and explode when you kill them, which is always fun. The last enemy is one I'm actually going to complain about a little bit. That's the first boss. Now this boss has an awesome build-up. It's very reminiscent to the original F.E.A.R with the robot falling out of the ceiling, but expanded upon. I died to this boss quite a few different times. Although I feel the complaint here mostly doesn't have to do with the boss and instead has to do with the arena I'm fighting the boss in. It is very easy to not know if you can get shot or not. This boss can still shoot me despite the fact that I'm crouching behind this, but I can't shoot over this. Most of the time if I died, that's how I died. This boss is more than just a walking tank though, although he definitely is that. Occasionally he will jump at you and explode when he hits the ground. This does a lot of damage. Now there is an audio cue for this, but oftentimes I find it easy to not notice. So I think having some sort of visual cue on top of the audio cue would help with that a lot. The boss definitely isn't a lost cause, just a few small things that I found to be a little annoying. Genuinely, that's my only complaint about this entire game though, just that boss. All these other little details I loved about it. When I opened the main menu, right away I could tell I was gonna have a good time. Oh, and that's Dawn, the main character you're playing as. I said this build doesn't have much story, but in one of the PDAs you can read that she admitted herself into a hospital because she thought she broke her leg, but she just had a sprained hamstring. When you wake up, you're just in this hospital full of chaos. One last thing is that when you go to start the game, you have the option to choose your difficulty. Normal mode actually feels like normal mode. People are going to be at least a little prideful and at least choose normal mode even if they're brand new to video games. This is why when it comes to Halo, heroic mode is actually the mode the whole game was based around and normal is pretty easy. In this game, however, normal mode actually is somewhat of a challenge. Now it's not really hard, but you do kind of have to pay attention. If you don't, you can die pretty quick. However, after you choose your difficulty mode, there's more options. You can choose traditional mode, which will give you checkpoints and quick saves. You can choose hardcore mode, which gives you no checkpoints or quick saves. You can only save by spending 600 credits at a machine. Spare ammo will be thrown away when you reload, and health regeneration is disabled. I should point out that traditional mode doesn't have health regen. Your health only regens to 35 if your health is that low. I actually really like this mechanic because it means you're never going into a battle with only like 5 health or something. Like 35 isn't a lot, but it's certainly manageable. And there's an option to start with only an assault rifle, just like pistol starts in Doom if you really want to do that. But there's also something else here you've probably noticed. Randomizer mode. It's not in this build, it's not available in the demo at all, but it says it randomizes enemy placement, pickups, behavior, and more. This seems like an awesome mode that would be great for replay value after you've already beaten the game on traditional mode. So that leaves me very curious. I want to see what that turns into. So that's Selaco. If you can't tell, this project is turning out much better than I think any of us ever could have anticipated. I spent most of this video praising it, but know that it's not unfounded. I genuinely enjoy it this much. I don't think people get to see positive having fun Jarek too much, because typically the videos that get the most views are of bad games that people are curious of instead of awesome games that we've all played. Anyway, my point here is go wishlist this on Steam, go follow their Twitter, go follow this project, because if it turns out like this demo, you won't want to miss it. Hey, I want to give a big thanks to the Selaco team for giving me access to this build. I had a lot of fun playing this game, and I've been playing nothing but bad games lately, so I appreciate it. I want to give a huge thanks to people that join me on Twitch. You can click down in the bottom right to go to my Twitch. If you subscribe to my Twitch, you get to see my videos a week ahead of time. And of course, I want to give a huge thanks to every single one of you for watching this video.